Welcome to the reInvent recap. So I'm going to be starting it off with a bit of exciting, I hope it's exciting categories. So how we are going to do is we have divided the topics amongst the speakers. So we'll be each covering some of the key things that we thought is exciting in the last reInvent. So today I will be talking mainly about these three categories: the AI, ML, data and analytics, and then storage. So yeah, first of all, it's AI and ML. So I think we are all familiar with a lot of artificial intelligence and machine learning going around. Trending these days, but with ChatGPT and everything. But so from AWS side, we see that they are actively working on improving a lot of these things, and their main service that they provide is AWS SageMaker. So for those of you who don't know, SageMaker is used basically to build, train, and deploy machine learning models for any use case with fully managed infrastructure, tools, and workflows. So you can create like Jupyter Notebook labs, and then you can gather the data, you can prepare it, you can train the model, and then you can deploy it for production workloads in a timed manner as well. So SageMaker has been really useful, and it's in the cloud, right? So you don't have to worry a lot about setting up Jupyter Labs, setting up all of these the Python workspace and everything like that. It's all in the cloud, so it's all managed for you. So the new feature that they have introduced here is quite exciting. Is the fact that there's built-in data preparation in SageMaker, which I will show in the demo soon. But what it means is now when you build these data frames in Jupyter, it automatically visualizes and shows each column what type of data is in each column, what are the categories that are available, and whether the data is too skewed or whether the data is properly balanced, and whether we should perform any transformations. So it makes it really easy to use, and you kind of get the you can skip a lot of these data preparation steps that you generally do. Simply with just 2 or 3 button clicks, it'll generate the code for you as well. So it's pretty easy. I'll show that in a demo because it's a bit exciting if I actually show it. So that's the first thing that they have introduced, which it's pretty cool. And the other two things are this real-time collaboration, which is kind of like how in Google Drive, where we can write documents, or in OneDrive where you can write documents, and others can also join and write in real time, and you can see who is writing what, right? So that you can all share the same document. In the same way, SageMaker now supports real time. So that means multiple people can work on the same Jupyter Notebook, and they can all run and see the same code. So it's very useful for teams that are trying to build these kind of complicated models, and that needs a lot of people to work on the same model. So it makes it very easy for them. So that's a really good addition by the SageMaker team. And finally, they've also added a option to automatically convert the notebook to production ready jobs. So that means, let's say if you want to run some batch jobs, or if you want to train the model every single day on a particular interval or with new type of data set, that can be done very easily with just a click of a button. I'll show that as well. And so that you can schedule your jobs for whatever type of ML model that you're trying to build, whether it's classification or regression. So it makes it pretty easy to use. So again, I think it'll be more cool if I just show you guys. So I hope you guys can see the screen. Yeah, okay. So now, so to come to come to this place, what you have to do is you can log into your AWS console, and then you can search for SageMaker. So once you are in SageMaker, there's an option to what you have to do first is create this domain. So the domain will only allow you to kind of play. It'll create a specific domain for you, and in that domain you can play around and create your own Jupyter Lab and the studio and everything. So you can access it through that domain. So for this demo purpose, I already created the domain. It's pretty easy to do though, even if you want to try it. So they made it very beginner friendly. I can switch it to a different region just to show you guys to get started. So what you have to do is you can just go to the domain section and you can go to getting started, and yeah. So here there's a configure SageMaker domain. If you want more advanced stuff, you can do a standard setup, but if you say quick setup, it's pretty easy. It'll tell what kind of features you get out of this setup option, and you can just give the domain name and the profile name. And if you click submit, in a few minutes, it'll prepare the domain and you can then access it. So once you access it, I'll switch back to the Oregon region. So once you access it, you will be invited with a screen like this. If I go to the home page, like this, okay. So here you can create a launcher. You can do a lot of things. There's a lot of things you can do here. But what I wanted to show today is the new feature, right? So for the new feature, what I did was I imported a data set. This is a standard data set that I found in Kaggle. So I just imported that data set just to show you guys the feature. So how it will work is, so what's happening here is I'm basically importing this SageMaker data wrangler, which is what's going to be using to visualize our data. And then I'm just copying the data set from one of my S3 buckets, and I'm importing the data set. And so this is, for those of you who don't know, it's a pandas data framework. So in that data framework, I'm importing the data set and I'm simply just outputting the data set. So let me run these cells for you. So it's saying I've already installed it, and I'm just copying the file again. Then I'm reading the file, and I'm reading the file into the data frame, and I'm just going to output the data frame. So when I do that, so this is the new feature that I talked about. So it's visualizing all the columns in the data frame, and it's going through each column and it's figuring out what kind of categories are there in the column. So for example, here in the title, there are 10 different categories, or in the rating, there's only 5 categories. By categories, I mean like 5 types of possible values, right? So like that, it's doing a lot of these analysis on the data. And when you see these kind of warnings, you can see that there's some issues with these columns as well. So when you're building these kind of regression or classification models, it's important that your feature columns are all balanced, or there's no any kind of skewing or imbalance or anything like that. So generally, data scientists would know, like, to overcome that, you have to run certain algorithms and you have to figure out and manually kind of figure out what columns are unbalanced, and then you have to apply some transformation to make it balanced, right? So all of that process is automated. So here, when I click this with division name, it says there's a data quality issue, meaning there's missing values are high in this. So it's also giving me recommendations on how to fix it. So here it's saying the recommended option is to replace the missing value with a text call other. So the best part is I can just click this, and then it'll apply that code. I already did it here once. Let me remove that. Yeah, so it auto-generated the code for me. Basically, it's going to copy the data frame and it's going to take that column I mentioned, and it's doing the transformation that I needed, where it's going to fill the empty values with the value called other. So again, if I print the transform data frame, now you can see in the division name, there wouldn't be, see, the division name is fine now. So there's no quality issues in this column. So this is pretty exciting for data scientists, because it makes it very easy for them to kind of fix, build the data or build the model that they want to build, while skipping a lot of steps, like automating a lot of steps that they usually do to kind of clean the data set that they're working with. So I think it's very nice, and that's the first thing I wanted to show, because it's pretty cool. So yeah, so this is how it works. Granted, there's more features within this data wrangler that I'm showing here. I just wanted to show something small to make it cool for you guys. So to continue on, for this, I couldn't really log into 2 users to show you. But how the data real-time collaboration will work is, this is how it'll be. Like, they'll both have the same notebook. But if, let's say, the Tom is editing in the left, and the other person, Anjay, she can see that here Tom is typing Tom in that notebook. It's similar to how we usually do real-time collaboration in like Word and other software. So, but it's pretty useful here, because a lot of people usually work on creating these models, and it makes it very easy for them to write it in the same notebook. So that's a really cool, another cool feature that they've added. Okay, so that's the first announcement in SageMaker. There's another announcement in SageMaker, which is this geospatial data. So generally, when we use these kind of map applications every day, we try to find our favorite restaurant or try to find the fastest route to our favorite location, wherever we want to go. We use kind of the data that we use there. It's called geospatial data. So there are two types of geospatial data, whether it's vector data or then there's raster data. But the problem here is that when you want to do some sort of machine learning predictions using this geospatial data, let's say you wanted to see how these certain areas are, and you want to analyze what kind of, let's say if there was a natural disaster and you want to predict how far this damage is done in this particular geographic location. Doing that right now, it's kind of cumbersome because you have to take all of this. The data set for that is not there very openly. And training the model is also quite cumbersome because you have to kind of, there's a lot of variables there, and you have to make sure everything is in place properly. So what SageMaker has introduced for this problem is that they are bringing their own geospatial ML, meaning they are giving already trained deep neural network models that are able to kind of more specialize. If you provide a new data set, they can specialize on it, or they're already ready for to be working with geospatial data. So it's it's pre-trained models. It's easy to use, and you can acquire these geospatial data with just a few clicks. So you don't have to do a lot of those manual processing that I told before. So I can show a small demo on that as well. So initially, when I was preparing for this demo, I created my SageMaker in US East, North Virginia. But then later, when I was trying to do the geospatial, I realized it's only available right now in Oregon. So, but I thought I'll share it here because if anyone wants to try it, it's only available right now in Oregon. So I had to create another SageMaker domain just to show you guys. So in the US East one, you don't see that option. But in the Oregon one, if you go to the data, you can see there'll be an option called geospatial. So here you can start these kind of Earth observations jobs. So when you click that, then you can create a job here. And you can see different types of land data that they have. And you can choose one of these and then get started with building your model. I don't know too much into how this model will go from this point onwards, but it is pretty useful. So some of the use cases here is you can assess risk and insurance claims. You can prevent fraud and analyze the damage of natural disasters on local economies. And you can inform trading strategies. You can forecast market commodity prices. So like that, there's a lot of very high level value that this model provides. And I think that's why a lot of customers have requested it for it as well. So Amazon just went ahead and did it for us. They made it easy for us. So that's another addition I wanted to show because it adds a lot of value for these kind of geospatial machine learning problems. So yeah, those were the first two things. And the next thing I wanted to show was Amazon Textract's new Analyze Lending API. So for those of you who don't know about Textract is just a machine learning model it's a machine learning service that will automatically extract text and handwriting and data from scanned documents. So it's another level on top of general OCR, where it'll not just recognize the characters, but it'll also do some, it'll try to analyze and figure out what kind of documents are these, like whether this is a bill or whether this is a pay slip or whether this is a application or anything like that. So it tries to classify each document and try to figure out, okay, this document is made for this purpose. And it'll also pull out the images, the signatures and everything. And it's a pretty nice service. So the new thing that they brought here is the Analyze Lending API. So what this is, so this is more applicable for some countries where there's mortgages and stuff. So a lot of application comes every year for these kind of mortgages, right? So people apply for mortgages with a lot of different documents, and it's a very highly intensive manual process to go through all these documents. and figure out if all the fields are properly filled, if all the information is valid, and if all the forms are properly provided. So to kind of overcome this, what Amazon has provided here is, with this analyze lending API, is it's more specialized towards this mortgage documents, but it can also be kind of extended for other types of documents as well. But right now it's more specialized for these mortgage documents. And what it can do is it can go through each document and can figure out what kind of data is in it, what kind of fields are in it, so that it makes it very easy for the organization that's using it to figure out, okay, these are the forms that have been filled, these are the data that's been captured, and they can easily they can quickly get the value. They can quickly automate these validation process of this mortgage application. So for example, here they can figure out, okay, this document is a pay slip, this is a bank statement. They can run it through tech stack, they can get the data out, and then with that extracted data, they can even run another step of automation on top of it. So they can, instead of everything being manually reviewed, they can even have some certain conditions that they can automatically either approve it or reject the application. So it makes it very easy for this particular scenario, where they can validate these documents using machine learning and Amazon Extract. So I can show a quick demo for this as well. So for Textract, you can just search for Textract and you will see it coming up in the console. So right now, they itself have provided a nice demo window. So it's easy to see how powerful Textract is. So here you can see, if you come to Textract, there's a demo option in the left. So what it's doing is, it's they have uploaded certain set of documents, and they are just letting Textract to figure out what kind of data is in it, and to classify what are these types of documents are. So it has figured out, this is a pay slip, this is a check, this is some sort of an identity document, and this is a bank statement, and like that. And inside each document, you can see that it's even picking up these hotspots. Like it's picking up, okay, this is a company name, this is the address, and there's a pay date, and then there's the marriage filing status, borrower name. So like that, all of these things that you would generally, manually have to extract out of a document, it's automatically doing it for us. So it's pretty easy for the people who really want this. And it'll also figure out if there's any documents with signatures, and it'll highlight it that this document has a signature. So as you can see, there's a signature. So this is another exciting addition for people for these kind of, it's kind of tailored for this mortgage application, but they're saying it can be extended furthermore for normal. You can even upload packages here and test how it works as well. So going forward, I think this could be a really exciting service in the future as well. So yeah, that's why I wanted to show a bit of that as well. So yeah, those are the three things that I wanted to show under AI ML. There were more announcements, but due to time constraints, and I just thought these are more exciting to demo and more easy to show. But some of them are more specific announcements, but I feel like these are pretty exciting. Especially the SageMaker announcements are really useful, and I just wanted to show that. So moving on with data and analytics, I want to show two services here, Data Zone and Clean Rooms. So for the first feature, Data Zone, this feature is not out yet. It's still coming soon. But what they are trying to do here, it's right now it's in a very conceptual stage, but they are building on it. But it's a very exciting feature for like large organizations who wants to share, search, and discover data at scale across the organizational boundary. So it can be different departments in the same organization, and they all want to share different data that they have within the organization. And they want to kind of govern and provide fine-grained access control to each user in that organization to see what type of data that they have. So for example, a marketing department might want to know what kind of data is being used in the development or in the supply chain, so that they can use that data to create some sort of analytics and figure out the forecast what kind of purchases that can be done in the future. So like that, this will be like a data governance and a data consuming platform. So the producers and the consumers, they'll be all connected in the same platform, and they'll be all governed by a fine-grained user access control, so that everything data related can be done within the same service, right? So anyone who will, so if you can look here, there are these different data sources, and they're coming through Redshift, and I mean, like, they can come through Redshift, Glue, DynamoDB, S3, or any of these data producers. They'll all be added into Amazon Data Zone. And once they're in the zone, all the users in Data Zone, then they'll have access to these kind of analytical tools such as Athena, QuickSight, and Redshift. So they can easily visualize and get the analytical advantage that they're seeking for, and use it across the organization to kind of bring the value faster than they usually do, because now they can share it across different departments within the organization itself. So it's pretty easy to collaborate across the company, you know. So that's the value that they're trying to bring with the data zone. So right now, I can't really show anything here because it's still coming soon, and I think it's still under preview. But I wanted to add it here because I think for massive organizations, this will be a nice addition, because then they can then these analytics that they're doing within the company, it doesn't have to be segregated across departments. It can be all in the same place, and it'll make it easy for the users also to see this data and govern the data sharing across these projects, so that it makes it you can bring value quite faster. Yeah, so that is the first service, Data Zone. The second one is AWS Clean Rooms. So this one is this is a bit more exciting. So what this will do is, now the first one I told was within an organization, and it's different fields in the same organization, right? Different departments in the same organization. But here, this can be totally different domains, totally different industries. So let's say there's a financial service sector, and there's a healthcare, and then there's advertising. So these are different sectors, and but in certain scenarios, they might want to share the data that they have with these other industries as well. For example, the healthcare industry might want to share a certain amount of their data with the advertising industry, so that the advertising can do their job a bit better, so with that data that they share. But the problem here, the challenge here is that when they share this data across different industries, there's a problem, obviously, of privacy and security, right? So you're going to share a lot of personally identifiable information, and there's a concern of these kind of secure data being leaked across these companies. So this clean rooms, what they are trying to do is they want to protect the underlying data. They want to protect the data. They want to make sure the data that they're sharing is not being, it doesn't violate any kind of security or privacy protocols, but it'll allow these different industries to collaborate and share their data, so that they can then they can then take the value out of that data that they're sharing across these industries. So if I show it you in a diagram, here you can see there are 3 different collaborators. They are all bringing their different types of data into the clean room. And in the clean room, you can create these tables, and you can set the rules, and you can do analysis from there itself. Or you can export these the aggregated data into an S3 bucket, and then from there you can connect it with a lot of analytical services that are there in AWS to get more value out of it, right? So that's what they try to do with clean room. So the feature here is that you can create a clean room, you can add participants, you can collaborate in a few clicks, and then you can collaborate with hundreds of thousands of companies without sharing or revealing any kind of underlying data. So there's a lot of privacy enhancing controls, and it's flexible and easy to use. So it's pretty useful for these kind of multidisciplinary data analytic problems. And I can show you a bit of it as well. So right now you can just search for clean rooms. Again, this feature is also currently under preview, so it is subject to change while you're using it. But you can create a collaboration here. So once you come to this page, if you click create collaboration, here you can see you can create a collaboration, say company A and company B. So it can be different companies, and you can just connect it. And then you can create, you can mention the AWS account IDs of each of these companies, and then you can connect all of them together. And then you can say who are the members who can query, who are the who can get the results. And then you once you create the collaboration, then you'll get more options to kind of set the rules and create the tables, and see what kind of data should come to the table, and um, basically clean and prepare the entire data set for further analysis across these industries. So that's another thing I want to show within the data and analytics, because both of them it's very high level, it's for massive organizations, but it will provide a lot of value for these organizations, because they are the ones who are going to do massive big data problems. They'll be getting data in massive volumes. So these services like this will help them. It'll not just, the first service will help an organization to grow, and the second one will help multiple organizations to grow together. So it's pretty useful. Finally, I wanted to just highlight one exciting announcement under the storage category, which is Amazon EFS. EFS, for those who don't know, it's an elastic file system. It's like it's a shared file system that you can connect with EC2 and other types of services. But so right now it works pretty great, and they have added more performance improvements on top of it. So there's an elastic throughput where it provides as much throughput as needed as a pay-as-to-go basis. So it now can scale up and scale down based on the demand that is coming to the application. And this is there's a new life cycle policy as well. So on top of the existing 7, 14, 30, 60, and 90, now they have introduced a 1-day policy as well. So after 1 day also, you can move the data into a different storage tier. So you can start saving costs from the first day itself, depending on your application scenario. But I think that's a nice addition that they've added. And finally, they were always, it's good to have a faster read and write. So they have improved the reads and writes up to 60% reads and up to 40% lower latency when it comes to read and writes. So it's always good to have better performance. So I think I thought to highlight that as well. So those are the three main categories that I wanted to cover. But for me personally, the most exciting one I saw was the SageMaker, because I have worked a bit with this data mining problems, and I have worked with Jupyter Notebook in locally as well, where setting the Jupyter Notebook up, and then you do this kind of preparing this kind of machine learning problems. But when I saw that, you can just visualize the data, and you can easily transform the data with just 2 clicks, I was just blown away. So I think I will start using that service pretty often now. So I think that's a really exciting addition that they've added. So yeah, that's all I wanted to cover for today. I think I can happily give it to the next Lakindu. So he will start off with serverless, and I think we all love serverless. So yeah, over to you, Lakindu. You're muted.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
But I hope I am audible. So yeah, thank you, Keshav, for that lovely setting on AI and ML. So I think everyone found that very insightful. So let me just share my screen. So I think, Keshav, I think you might have to stop sharing, right?
Yes.
All right, let me know if you can see my screen. Okay. Yeah, I think I'm good now. Yeah. How about now? Can you all see my screen, guys?
Yes, I can see.
All right. Let me just head over to the start here. All right. So I'm going to be talking to you about the brand new inventions on builder experience and serverless. So a lot of good stuff has happened over the last reInvent of 2022, where they introduced a lot on a low code, no code aspect, and they kind of brought about more serverless concepts that supported this low code, no code kind of aspect in development now. So currently, if we were to take a look at what's new in builder experience, there's two main services that have been developed by AWS for this year, which is Application Composer and Amazon Code Whisperer. So let's take a look at that right now. So the first one is Code Whisperer. No, it's not as what you think. The code does not whisper out to you. So it's essentially like, think of Copilot on crack. So that's just the one good fun way of saying it, because it has all the powers of GitHub Copilot. So if you've already used GitHub Copilot, you would know that it's this ML-driven service which auto-completes code on your editor by understanding the natural language that you type and also the previous syntax that you have provided. So it knows about the context that you are in. So if you are designing a React component, or let's say a Lambda function or anything else, it would know which context you're working on, and it would be able to auto-generate the rest of your code in order to help you finish the rest of your function. So the best part of this is it significantly improves your developer productivity, because you don't have to think about writing complex algorithms anymore. You can just outsource that onto Code Whisperer. And it also, during this initial launch period, so from the time of reInvent to currently in the preview stage, it's all free for all regions, but I don't think it'll cost that much once it's out for production. Still, you can access it, and getting started with it is pretty simple. So yeah, so let's take a look at how it works. So obviously you'd set up Code Whisperer on your IDE, and how this works is it uses the AWS toolkit. You install that onto your IDE, and then you can start using Code Whisperer, and then it will use ML to generate your code and send back a response back to the IDE. And another good feature about this is it has the capability to run security scans all on your code. So if you click the button called Start Security Scan, it'll inspect your code and kind of give out really difficult bugs which developers might not be aware about, and even point out specific security vulnerabilities on your code as well, if there are any. So that's quite interesting, and that's kind of powerful for developers, because you know that your code has been security reviewed by another entity. So you have faith in your code as well. So when you push it out to production, you know that your code is safe, unless you again pass it through some Sonar Lint or another linting or Sonar Cube or some other security assessment tool for your code. So getting started with it. It works on several IDEs like VS Code, JetBrains, Visual Studio, Lambda Console, and in your AWS Cloud 9. But currently, it only supports a very few limited languages: C#, Java, JavaScript, Python, and TypeScript. So still, because it's in the preview phase, we can't expect much support for a wider variety of languages like Rust and Golang. So, but in the future, there's definite support for more languages over the course of this year. And how you set it up is, this does not work through your normal IAM role where you create an IAM user and then you create an access key and the secret access key. That does not work anymore with applications on AWS. You actually have to use some kind of federated sign-in or AWS Identity Center, where you can set up these users and then give these specific users access to enable Code Whisperer within their local IDE. And then you'd have to go to your Code Whisperer console and select which users are allowed to access it from the AWS Identity Center. And finally, you can just launch it on your IDE. So I do have a demonstration prepared on it, but we'll combine Code Whisperer along with the other tool that we are going to be discussing and look at a full-on end-to-end picture on how the code tool actually works. So yeah, so the next one is Application Composer. Now, this is a really big step onto low-code, no-code development. So essentially, what do you mean by low-code, no-code? So essentially, it's building software without having to write or write as minimal code as possible. Because of this, it helps teams develop software faster and deliver it onto production. So it significantly reduces your time to release. But currently, you might be wondering, hey, I can do any low code, no code right now on AWS. No, that's not the case. As of now, Application Composer solely focuses on serverless, and where you can develop serverless backends. And the best part of this is it acts as this IAC generator, where you just have this kind of playground to just drag and drop tools. And it will generate this IAC code for you that is based on CloudFormation and SAM, where you can just quickly deploy it on to AWS just to test it to see if it works as expected. So yeah, we discussed this where you have a canvas and you can drag and drop resources onto the canvas. So it's essentially, think of it like you're working with Lego. How do you take these pieces all from all over and you just drag and drop, you put these Lego pieces together and finally you have an end-to-end application. And that's exactly how Application Composer works. And the best part of it is now, since Application Composer already generates an IAC file for you, you can save that onto your local file system. And if you are a big fan of CloudFormation templates and just working with YAML in general, quite frankly, I'm not a big fan of that. So if you are a big fan of that, you can just start coding with the YAML file and it will reflect on the console in real time as well. So yeah, so you can use SAM Accelerate, which is a quick way of deploying your changes onto the AWS cloud to just check as you build it to see if everything is working as expected. So yeah, so now let's jump into the demonstration. So let me know if you all can see my AWS console. If I could just have a quick confirmation, that would be great. Is it all? Yeah, I'm assuming it's all good. Okay, so let me just first off, we'll take a look at Code Whisperer. So if you just log on to your console, pick any region that you like, and just head over to Amazon Code Whisperer. So you can just click on it. And so yeah, let's just see where it takes us. So if you have not enabled Identity Center, it will ask you, it will give you a prompt saying enable Identity Center and then come back here. So you can just do that from your end and set up users and give them permission, which services that they allowed to use. And after you do that, head on back to Cloud Code Whisperer and just click get started. You can just click view settings here. And then from here, essentially what you have to do is you have to decide which user or which group. So when you set up Identity Center, you can set up a specific user group and a user. So if you select groups here, all the users belonging to the group will have access to Code Whisperer. So just be mindful about that. So right now I've added myself on to use Code Whisperer. And if you actually install AWS Toolkit, so if you head over to your IDE, so I'll use VS Code for demonstration. And if you just if you just go to your extensions and just go type in AWS Toolkit. So you just install the first one that pops up here. And you can see there's this developer tools here, which says Code Whisperer. So when you have that, you can directly use Code Whisperer. And how this works is you'd have to go to your AWS. After you install it, will show it here. And then right now I am connected with AWS IAM Identity Center. So be mindful, don't select the normal default access key because that's going to be deprecated soon for Code Whisperer. So be mindful and just use IAM Identity Center logins and just go ahead and log in. And once you start, you can directly just go to this Code Whisperer and just click on this pause, or it'll be start auto suggestions. So just click on, so let's start it. Yeah, resume auto suggestions. So yeah, and then you can, once it starts, you can see this quite notification here that says Code Whisperer toolbar icon. So just it knows now you're running on it. And as you code, you have this run security scan feature where it inspects the code and just say points out any potential bugs or anything. And yeah, now that we've set up Code Whisperer, let's have a look at the App Composer. So when you're taking a look at App Composer, that's a brand new service. So just go to your AWS console and type in Application Composer. And once you do that, it will take you onto this page. So this is a new application launched by AWS. So first off, you can start by creating a project. So I'll be on US East 1 region and just create a project. And that will ask you which direction, which file path to save your files in. So right now I'm going to be opening up a blank project, which opens up a CloudFormation template. And I'm going to use connected mode. So what this means is, early in the presentation, I talked about two-way editing. So if you enable connected mode, any local changes that you make on your YAML file will be reflected on Application Composer. So I recommend doing this because then you can work code and drag and drop from the canvas. So right now I'll just select this project. So I'll just, it's an empty folder. So I'll just selected that. And yeah, let's cite view files. And yeah, just create it. And let's just build a simple application. So we'll just explore the console here. So you have all the serverless tools that you need. Some are not there. So something like DNS, they don't still have it, like Route 53, they don't still have it, but you can build pretty cool stuff. So you have API Gateway, Cognito, DynamoDB, EventBridge, Kinesis, Lambda, SNS, SQS, and even step functions. So we'll just drag an API Gateway onto our canvas, and we'll just name this first API or something. And yeah, also, why don't we go ahead and open up. Okay, so you can see the template is already created. So here you can see we've already created this first API. So anything I drag and drop here, so I can just directly change this. So I can just go ahead and name this to so my first API. And if I save it, it'll be reflected here, hopefully. Okay, it has been auto-loaded. So where is it? Okay, okay, that seems to be possibly an issue because yeah, I remember I did this in the afternoon and it worked. So let's just get this out of the way then. So seems like name updating does not seem to work on it. Okay, maybe then another issue. Okay, just get rid of this. Okay, we'll just drag this on. And let's just go ahead and edit this and just call this first API. Okay, I made a typo there. So first API. And so yeah, we have the API now. And let's just add an endpoint. So here we get by default an API here. So an endpoint, we'll just call this hello world or something. We'll just call it hello. And we can just call get here. And yeah, we'll just save that. So now we have the route added here. So you can see the route is all available here. And we can then go ahead and wire up anything that we want to do. So let's just go ahead and wire up a Lambda function. So we'll just drag it on. So it's just like building Lego. So from here, we want this endpoint to go on to our Lambda function. So we have that function here now. So you can see that the function is already created here. And it also has an API gateway event here. So where it takes it from the API with this API on this endpoint, and this will be the event. It will be triggered. This Lambda function will be triggered on. So now we want some place to type the code. So that is where you change the source path. So here I'll just turn this to hello world demo. And the same thing for the source path, hello world demo. So let's just save that. And once you do that, you can also just go ahead and change your runtime, your architecture, memory, timeouts. So essentially, you don't have to code anything, just tick the boxes and update the stuff, and you're good to go. And IAM, you don't have to think about adding IAM policies at all, because even if you add a DynamoDB table on it, it knows the root policies that you want, and it gives the minimal permission set for your Lambda function. So you don't have to worry about that also. So now we have this code here, so we can get rid of it because this was the default generated one. So now we have the hello world demo function. And for now, we'll just have a small API gateway return here. So we'll just have, so since we're invoking this from the API gateway, this will go in the Lambda proxy integration. So if we just return, we can just return the status code. So now you can see code whisperer is also in action now. It knows the context that we're working on, and it already knows what to return the body also. So now we can just we can see what it does. So let's see if it does anything. Okay, here it still does not, message hello world, So so now we have the Lambda function, but now let's say that you want to wire up a DynamoDB table or something. So the same thing. So you bring the DynamoDB onto this, and you want, so we'll just call it hello table. And you will want to get the table name. So now the Lambda function does not know the name, right? So for that, you will have to wire up the Lambda to use the DynamoDB table. And the second you do that, you will notice that it uses the normal confirmation syntax and gets the table name and the yarn. So now it hooks that onto environment, and also it gives the CRUD policy for the hello table. So now you can see how easy it is. It only does it automatically for you. So all you have to do is, if you want to get the access to the table name here, so if I just say const users table, hello table. So that will be, I can just get it from the env just like this. So now that will give me the access to the table here. And let's say we want the partition key on it. So let's say we are returning all the items on it. So yeah, let's just do that. So for that, we'll need to install AWS SDK because it's not wired onto this. So for that, just cd onto your src hello world demo and just install your AWS SDK on it. So yeah. Okay, awesome. So now we have AWS SDK on it. So now you can just import your AWS SDK. And we can, and then we can create an instance of document client because we're dealing with DynamoDB. And so new aws.dynamodb.document client. And we are working in the US East 1 region. So we are going to set that up. And we are going to, so I don't ever do a scan on your database. This is just for demonstration purposes. So don't ever do a scan on your database. So this is just to demonstrate a simple integration. So we'll just get the promise here and we'll await that and get the items. So we'll return an empty array if there's nothing here. And here also, so we can here db payload and we can pass in the items here. So now we can see what's the, okay. So now we can just run a quick, we can go to Code Whisper and just ask if there are any security vulnerabilities here potentially. So let's see if it detects anything here. Mind you, since this is in preview, your security scan will hang a bit at times. So for me, personally, when I tried it, it hang, okay. So now it says no issues were found. So that's pretty awesome. So now what you can do is you've actually created a full end-to-end application. So you're good to go. So all you have to do is now just go over to this VS Code template here. You have everything that you want, right? So now just type SAM sync, so install SAM first, and then just give a stack name. So I'll just call this AWS demo. And we just let the, okay, template file. No, okay, I have to go back a bit. Okay, so now we'll let it sync. And so it says don't run it in production stacks. So yeah, that's common. That's obvious. You wouldn't do that. So now it'll say bundle up everything and it'll actually deploy your entire thing onto CloudFormation. So now what we can do is we can head over to our API gateway just to see the resources being provisioned. So yeah, let's see how it looks like. Okay, I think I'm having issues with the deployment and the video. So just mind me if I break up a bit. Okay, so let's head over to this, see if the APIs if they still won't be up anyways. Okay, so now you can see it's deploying it on US East 1. So you can see it's provisioning everything right now. So yeah, so that's the table and that's the CloudFormation stack. So it initiated the resource and yeah, it's created. So now let's see how it works. So now if we head over to DynamoDB and let's just see how it is there anything. Yeah, so you can see the table is already there. And the IAM role for the Lambda function. So that seems to be good now. So that's also creating. Yeah, so now it's created. And if we just keep an eye out for our API gateway just to see the invocation point. So let's figure out the endpoint that we have. Hello. So yeah, that's hello on a get function. Okay. Okay, so now it's creating the API and had set the deployment. And I assume it's setting up the invocation permission from API gateway to Lambda. So that's the resource policy, I'm assuming. So yeah, now it says infrastructure sync completed. So now if I reload API gateway, I will likely have, yeah, awesome. So now our entire low code, no code application, low code, yeah, I won't call it no code. So if we just head over to our production stage and just invoke it, so we'll need to get it to the hello endpoint. So if we just head over to the hello endpoint. So yeah, so we actually built an API gateway and the via Lambda function and created the DynamoDB table in under 10 minutes. So that's pretty powerful if you think about it. So you just have to make sure that you know what you're doing behind the scenes. So you know what's happening and what kind of resources are being provisioned and how each service works, because it's not this, the motivation behind this is to get people to try out serverless. So in a way, make sure you learn as you go, because if you just stick to this, you won't, if you ever jump out of application composer, you'll be lost. So you'll have to know what the sort key is, and if you're learning on Lambda, what is a Lambda layer, so stuff like that. So yeah, so we actually created an entire application with it. So now let's just jump back onto our presentation and move on to the actual serverless part of it. So with serverless, there were a lot of introductions. Mainly the two that I would love to talk about are Snapstart and Event Bridge pipes. So if you take a look at Snapstart, so Java, if you take a look at Java in general, Java is one of the oldest programming languages. And if you ask anyone, everyone knows Java one way or another. So when serverless or when Lambda first came out, people wanted to try adapting Java to it. But one of the biggest issues of that is Java and Lambda don't really work well together, because Lambda is all about quick initialization, quick execution, quick response. So why would you say that Java does not work well? So even it's a high performing language, right? You build a lot of production ready applications with it. So this all boils down to your actual Lambda life cycle. So when you take a look at the Lambda life cycle, you have the execution initialization phase. So that's where where Lambda service downloads the executional environment, which is the Firecracker VM, and it downloads your code, possibly from S3, and then it initializes the runtime, and then it initializes the function code. Now, on a Node or Rust-based language, the actual initialization of your function code is not that long, because it's not that complex to load a Node application or a Rust application onto your VM, onto your OS. But if you take a look at Java, when the actual initialization time, when you consider about it, you have to do class loading. So class loading is where the Java JV, where the project is scanned and all your classes are loaded onto your JVM. And then if you're using a framework which supports dependency injection like Spring Boot, the JVM would have to do some kind of reflection mechanism, and in order to inject the classes onto your use case. And then you would have to compile your code as you run it. And then Java would have to convert your class code into bytecode, which I think if I can remember well, that's how it works. You have to convert the bytecode, which gets fed onto the JVM. So that's another extra compilation process. So it's another transpilation process. So I might be wrong over there, but you can correct me if I'm wrong there. But I think, to my knowledge, that's how Java works. So because of that, it creates an insanely long cold start duration. So some customers face about 10 to 15 seconds of cold start with huge Java projects. So this is why AWS stepped in and we are giving you this service called Snapstart, which is going to bring down your cold start duration to less than 2 seconds in Java. Yeah, 2 seconds. That's correct. So Snapstart, it's a free of charge service that's bundled onto Lambda itself. And what it aims to do is, it aims to optimize your function initialization process and bring up to 10 times faster startup performance on AWS Lambda. So how does it work? So Lambda is by default, you can just enable it. But I think if you're running it on Java, it's by default enabled. To my knowledge, it's an by default enabled service function. So what happens is, whenever you publish a new version onto your Lambda function, the execution environment will initialize. So let's say you publish a hello world function. So then what it'll do is, it has an event that's triggered saying, hey, this function has been published, a new version has been published, let's initialize the environment now. So when it initializes the environment, it'll download the VM and it'll download the code and it'll perform the function initialization. And what happens after that is, it takes a snapshot of the initialized virtual machine that the function will run on, and then it will encrypt and store your snapshot onto an S3 bucket or something. And after that, it will load this snapshot onto caches which provide very low latency. So then what actually happens is, when you actually invoke a Java function after that, it does not go through this entire life cycle of execution initialization, runtime initialization. What it does is, it enters into a phase called resume initialization. So in that phase, what happens is, it will take the code from this cached layer and use that to initialize the environment. So it doesn't have to go through the entire thing. So it just takes a snapshot of the VM and uses that to run your code. Now, that is quite interesting, and that is quite fascinating because that actually speeds up your Lambda performance. So this is just the entire life cycle what I just described. So resume, and then you invoke it. So you have to keep in mind that when you publish a function, it might take about 15 seconds before you get to actually use it, because until the Firecracker VM snapshot is loaded onto the cache, it's in a pending state. So until that happens, you can't actually invoke your Lambda. So with that, after it gets into the active state only, you can invoke your Lambda function. So that's something interesting to remember. So I won't be doing a demo about this because there's nothing much to demonstrate about here. It's just that the overall feature is quite fun and good to use for Java programmers. And you don't have to do anything. You just have to tick a checkbox and that will enable Snapstart for you automatically. So yeah, on function invoke, it restores the execution environment and your code executes. And all function execution environments for a function will come from that cache snapshot. So if you have concurrent executions of the same Lambda function, that will automatically take your snapshot and initialize all of those concurrent invocations. So you don't have cold starts there as well. And you might be wondering now, when you cache something, it can't be all good. So for example, keep in mind that you might have to move your unique code. So if, for example, if you're generating some kind of logged ID or something, you might have to move it to your actual out of the initialization phase, because once you cache it, it's there in the cache. And you have network connections. You have to be in mind that network connections may not reestablish, may not persist on the cache. So you might have to reestablish it in your function code. And you might have to refresh your ephemeral storage. So in Lambda, you have temporary storage. You will have to refresh that before you use a Lambda function, because on a previous invocation, if you downloaded some image or something and you actually store that onto your temporary cache, it might be cached. So you're not 100% sure about it. So I recommend you to refresh the cache before you actually use it. So that's one of the biggest things that made me consider, should I move back onto Java for Lambda development? So yeah, just some thoughts for you to think about. And yeah, the next best thing is event bridge pipes. Now, don't confuse this with event bridge with event buses, because those two are completely different services still. Pipes are essentially this new service which helps you integrate a source and a consumer. So generally, if you were to integrate, let's say that you have, so if we go back, so I'll just head over to my application composer. So let's say that you have this, you have a queue here. So let's say you have a queue here, and you want to integrate this queue with another Lambda source. So generally what you would do is with a Lambda consumer. So you would have to set up an event subscription. So yeah, essentially, this is what I'm talking about. So you have to set up the event subscription for this Lambda function. Say, hey, give me data onto this Lambda function. And then you'd have to also keep track of batching. How are you going to pass the records onto the queue? Are you going to batch it? Are you going to go it one by one? And if you're going to do it in batches, what will happen if there's a partial error? So if you give 100 records to this single Lambda, what will happen if there's an error in just one of those records? The processing. What do? Do you terminate that, or do you jump out of the entire batch, or how do you do it? So stuff like that, you have to implement that onto your application. So this is where you actually get the best of both worlds, where you can actually integrate a low-code approach onto this end-to-end service integration or point-to-point integration. And you can also let the pipe or event bridge pipes handle all this much more complex integration logic that you have, such as setting up these batch sizes, partial batch errors, and everything. And even IAM policies for invocation. So if you have SQS, you would have to give permission to, you'd have to let SQS invoke that Lambda. You have to set up that policy there. So stuff like that, you don't have to do with event bridge pipes. They take care of it based on how you set up the pipe. So some of the key stuff, apart from what I just mentioned about integration, is pipes can handle a lot of filtering. So if you have a source, let's say you have a queue which receives tons of data, and you want to send only a specific criteria on your source or on your consumer. So with that, you can filter out events and you can batch them. And it filters also preserve the order. So if you send one, you know it's the order it goes in. And also you have high concurrency where pipes will automatically scale the integration. And also you can perform enrichment. So what do you mean by encryption? Enrichment. So for example, let's say you are getting data from a Kinesis stream, and that has just an ID or something. Or let's say you are getting something from SQS, which has only an ID. So when the consumer gets it, you want to ensure that it has a proper payload. So what you can do is you can add an interceptor or the enrichment layer, enrichment phase. You can just add your enrichment. So you can query a DynamoDB table or communicate to an external API and just get the data and return the payload that you want. And event-based pipe will automatically return that enriched data onto your consumer. So that's pretty interesting. That's quite essentially what pipes are in general. So with pipes, why would you actually use? I spoke about a lot of stuff. So you would use it when you want to have less integration costs or less integration code. And if you want to actually save costs. So when you talk about a consumer, so if you are adding a filtering logic within a Lambda function, that Lambda function would be invoked just to run the filtering logic. But with pipes, you can add the filter so that only if the filter lets through the message, only will it reach the consumer. And it offers fully managed polling and reduces the operational load because you don't have to worry about scaling or the infrastructure between your point of an integration. So this is just the high-level architecture or high-level use of event bridge pipe. So you have a lot of sources which emit events such as SQS, Kinesis, DynamoDB, streams, MSK, and if you're using some kind of message broker, you have Amazon MQ. And you can filter, enrich, and transform events to the pipe and let only the required consumers get it. So you have tons of consumers like event bridge. You can pass it on to an event bus from there, where another you can set up an event rule and you can fan out from there. Or you can push it to another queue itself. So you have some pretty good integration options on event bridge pipes. So here is one simple integration where if you want to write an SQS queue which which pulls data onto a state machine, you'd have to first set up the event source subscription and so on and so forth. But with event bridge pipes, all you have to do is create a pipe in the event bridge console, select the source, select the consumer, and just click create pipe, and you're good to go. It will provision the IAM role policies and set up integration. So why don't we also take a look at a sample example of how an event bridge pipe would work? So let me quickly jump back onto my AWS console and let's go to event bridge. So what we would do here is, why don't we head over? Okay, let me move this out of the way. Let's also head over to Lambda. And once let's just create a sample Lambda function which says testing pipe. Okay, that's what this simple Lambda function will do. It's just gonna have a simple Lambda which is gonna console log an event which shows the integration just for demonstration. So afterwards, what you can do here is, I'll try to wrap it up. I think I'm exceeding over my time limit. So let's just quickly edit the code. And we'll just set up a small, simple console log here just to get the event here. And we'll just quickly deploy that. And afterwards, so now it says successfully updated the function. And after that, let's just head on to Event Bridge and navigate onto pipes. And let's create a pipe of our own. So let's create the source. So yeah, first of all, we'll name the pipe. So demo pipe. And let's set up the source. Okay, let's set up the source. We'll go to DynamoDB. And yeah, so we have the table that I think is what to be created right now. Let me just double check the name here. Okay, I have to enable streams on this. What we're going to do is we're going to wire up a stream. Okay, stream is turned on. So we're going to wire up a stream, and that stream will integrate to a Lambda function and just get a hold of the stream records. So if you go back to Event Bridge, we can select the. Okay, I think it should be demo hello table. Okay, I think it's this one. GNZ, yeah, that's one. GNZ1, yeah, that's the one. Okay. And let's select the stream position as starting latest, and you can see the batch size, batch window, and on partial item failure, what should you do? So all of that good stuff is there. And we'll just get rid of filtering. But if you want, you could filter out a certain event type. So you can just set up an event filtering rule here that says type. I think that's not how you name it. So event name. So for event name, you can just, if you want to respond to only insert events, so you can have that also. So we'll just leave that. We'll leave that. And let's just test the pattern. So if you test it, so now you can see we are passing in an insert event. So now our event pattern match. So that means our consumer will get the records. And we don't want an enrichment phase here. And for the target, we'll go to AWS Lambda. And it's a testing pipe function. An invocation type, we'll set it to fire and forget. Yeah. It depends on your use case. And so now we are done with the configuration and we can actually create the pipe. So now let's head over to our Lambda and go to monitor and actually head over to CloudWatch logs to actually view the log here. So now you can see, I think the pipe is running. We go to pipes. Yes, pipe is running now. That's a DynamoDB stream integration. So now what you can do is you can head over to your DynamoDB console, and why don't we just explore that and insert one. So let's just call this order one, and we'll just add a new string. So name, we'll just call that Lucky News order. So yeah, so now we actually created the item. So now if you go to CloudWatch log, okay, where is it this one? Okay, we'll head over to CloudWatch logs here of the testing pipe function. Okay, that's already, okay, that's. Okay, so I think I might have selected the wrong stream here. I'm not too sure about it. Yeah, I think I set up the wrong table, guys, for the stream. So yeah. Yeah, I think that was an issue from my end, but generally, ideally, it should hit up the stream. So I had a lot of tables there, so I think I might have selected the wrong table when I was creating the pipe over there. But it works. It works. It's a really good service, and I actually did a video on it. So if you want to check out the actual fully functioning version, where I set up an integration and the filtering, so you can check that out also. But for now, I think I'll leave you be with this. But yeah, it does work. It's a pretty fun service where it allows you to perform really good point-to-point integrations. So yeah, so I think that's all I actually had. So thank you, and that's all from me covering all the builder experience and the serverless. And I would like to just invite the next speaker, who's going to be Lahiru, who's going to be talking to you about the rest of the good stuff from reInvent. Over to you, Lahiru.
Lakin, before we move on, I think it's a really interesting presentation. There's a one question in the chat. I'll answer that as well.
Yeah, sorry. Is it only available for Java or is it available for other languages? So I assume that you are talking about Snapstart. So if you are talking about Snapstart, then yeah, Lambda, it's only available for Java because right now the biggest issue with cold starts is coming from Java. So Java, when you spin up the JVM and load with reflection, if you have dependency injection and class loading, so that takes a lot of time. So right now it's only for Java, but AWS will have plans in the future to expand that onto more languages. So I hope that answers the question, Kasun.
Okay, I think in the interest of time, I'll take things over.
Yeah, awesome.
Awesome. So thanks, Akindu, as always, for sharing your serverless knowledge and all the good things about serverless. So let me share my screen. Good evening. My name is Lahiru, and so I'll be going through a couple of exciting announcements that we had over the last year at reInvent regarding security and a bit of compute. So, all right. So we have a bunch of topics to cover today, and let's power on with the interest of time. So first up, we have Amazon Security Lake. That was a new function or a feature or like service that was introduced back in reInvent. We'll be going through that and be discussing what it is and how it works and what's it all about. Verified permissions, very important for developers that are developing applications and all that sort of stuff. Control Tower. So we have some new updates to Control Tower. Amazon Inspector. Likewise, we have integrations with Lambda at the moment. We have updates to Guard Duty and CloudTrail Lake. Now, CloudTrail Lake isn't like a service that was introduced back in reInvent, but it was somewhere down the line. But I thought that this would be a good opportunity to like dive into it and see what it's all about and what it can bring to the table. Next, we have compute. Now, at reInvent, we had a couple of EC2 innovations or improvements. So we'll be diving into that as well. Now, without further ado, let's move on to the security side of things. First off, we'll be starting off with Amazon Security Lake. Sorry, I'm just figuring this out. Okay, I should do it. Now, what is Security Lake? Right. So before Security Lake, we didn't have a consolidated data lake for all the cyber security or like cyber or security events. Right. With the introduction of Security Lake, Amazon or AWS gives us a centralized data lake just for our security or AWS security logs. Right? Keep in mind that this is not only for AWS logs. We can also bring in our on-premise or custom security sources from across the regions to our Amazon Security Lake. Now, this aims to reduce operation complexity to collect these events. Now, without having the events in different components or different services, now we are able to bring in all the logs to Amazon Security Lake and then perform a vast range of analytics, alerting, and all that sort of good stuff. Right? Also, it also enables direct access to the data that we collect and search for long-term data. So this is quite important when you're talking about an investigation or like if you're doing sort of analysis. If you want to backtrack 6 months, if you want to backtrack 1 year, that is also possible at the moment. Also, we have a data lifecycle management built in. Now, when you're collecting data, data lifecycle becomes an important aspect because you don't want to keep storing data just for the sake of storing data. You can define these parameters within Security Lake. How does this actually work? Right, that's something that we need to think about. How it basically works is it integrates with AWS log sources and over 50 other security solutions or third-party security solutions that you can integrate into Amazon Security Lake. This builds a centralized data lake that allows you to integrate third-party analytics platforms. Right? This is the concept that AWS is building because you can collect the data and then feed them to your own third-party and log analytics or like event analytics platforms to perform further analysis. Right. It's important to understand that the data here within the lake is optimized for querying and storage efficiency. Also, the data is normalized according to the Open Cybersecurity Schema framework. Now, this is quite important because this is what lets you use third-party tools to actually analyze this data. So that's a short overview for Amazon Security Lake. I mean, this has been an innovative and a very talked about topic because AWS currently doesn't have something like an SIEM or like a security incident and event management. So this can act as an aggregator for all your security events so that you can pass them on to the analytics tools to perform your analysis. Right. Next up, we have Amazon verified permissions. So this is quite interesting. Now you had Cognito to actually provide access to your applications that you build or customized applications. Now, verified permissions actually enables you to implement scalable and fine-grained permissions within your custom applications, right? This basically externalizes the authorization with policy and schema management and builds or helps developers to build the application faster and support the zero trust architecture, right? So this is quite important because the future of cybersecurity, or like the future of security, is probably towards the zero trust architecture, basically not trusting anything and only allowing what is currently or what is required to do with their day-to-day tasks, right? So this is what we're trying to achieve with verified permissions. Also, it allows you to integrate with your current identity providers, such as, to sync user profiles, attributes, and group memberships. Now, how does this work, right? Amazon verified permissions actually has uses a custom policy language called CEDAR to define the granular policies. Now, the services then evaluates against these policies to determine what access must be granted, right? Zero trust adoption is made very simple with the rapid response times of these evaluations. Also, it has built-in integrations with identity providers such as Amazon Cognito. So if you're using Cognito, you can use Amazon verified permissions to add that extra policy level controls or permissions. So that's quite important to know. We'll be rushing over these how would I say this, these services, and we'll be going on the surface. But if you want to know a bit about these services, it's available on their website, or you can read about it, or you can reach out to us for further clarification. So next up, we have Control Tower. Now, Control Tower has been there for a long time, right? So this time, AWS or Amazon has a couple of updates to this, right? Now, these updates include the ability to enable users to apply these controls according to organization units by service, control, objectives, and compliance framework. So this is quite important because this allows you to fine grain to actually implement these controls at a granular level, much rather than how do I say this? Entire organization, right? It also defines a map between the controls and some of the cybersecurity frameworks that are out there, such as PCI DSS or NIST. So personally, when you apply a control, let's say you want to encrypt everything, you want to enable encryption on DynamoDB, right? Now, what compliance control that does that link back to? You don't really have that link. And during audits, it's a very tough thing to map. So here we have a content control library that has over 300 controls, which is actually mapped back to the regulations. So that makes things very easy. You can say PCI DSS 0.3 relates back to this control. So if you want to check if you're compliant to PCI DSS or some sort of other framework that this supports, you can have the ability to map back the control to the operational framework or cybersecurity framework. That's quite interesting that what they've introduced this time. Next, we have Amazon Inspector for Lambda. Now, Amazon Inspector has been there for EC2, ECR, content images, and all this sort of good stuff. But this time, Amazon Inspector supports Lambda functions. Now, this allows Amazon Inspector to discover and assess Lambda functions for security vulnerabilities. At the moment, it supports Lambda functions written in Java, Node.js, and Python. It's quite important. This will automatically map vulnerabilities within the AWS Lambda functions to the underlying Lambda layers, and then it will give you a consolidated vulnerability management solution for EC2, Lambda functions, and ECR container images. Basically, it will keep scanning your software dependencies or your basically your software dependencies within the Lambda functions to uncover security vulnerabilities that may be there. So that's quite important and interesting this time that we have that support. And we see that Amazon Inspector is growing. So we hope to see quite an array of integrations during these times. Right? Next up, guard duty. Guard duty has also been there for a very long time. I can't say a very long time, but it has been there and has supported quite a number of sources or log sources to actually detect anomalies. So now this time brings in improved machine learning techniques for RDS login activity modeling and suspicious activity detection in terms of RDS login activity. It has improved contextualized data for quicker resolutions. So it gives you additional data so that it's easier for you to analyze and drill down to the bottom of the alerts and to gain more insights. It has also added the integration to EKS, and this is a very crucial thing. It has the ability to alert against threats that are running inside the containers itself by monitoring the operating system level behavior. So this is quite important because this actually expands the coverage that guard duty has so that you can leverage this to the supported solutions at the moment. Last but not least, in the security purview, for this time, we have CloudTrail Lake. This was introduced in late January 2022, if I'm not mistaken. And this is actually an option within the CloudTrail the console. It basically enables collection of events from different partners, on-premise applications, or AWS events itself. The partners that I spoke about could actually be third-party sources, right? Such as GitHub, CrowdStrike, CyberArk, Okta, Netscope, and a lot more. So if you log into the console, head over to Data Lake, CloudTrail Lake. From there, you can have you see third-party integrations or third-party sources. From there, you have a list of third-party sources that you can configure and integrate into CloudTrail Lake. The significance of this is that it allows users to use SQL-based queries and to actually search events, right? So if you have 3 or 4 data sources coming in, you are able to use the join function within SQL and then join 3 or 4 log sources or like data sources and then query them all together. So this is the power that's behind CloudTrail Lake. And also it allows you to save these queries for future use as well. Remember that the maximum retention for CloudTrail Lake is 7 years, but you can tinker with it and reduce it to whatever the requirement. This basically allows you to have a near real-time troubleshooting for applications like what you did with CloudTrail. Now you have different third-party sources coming in, and then you can use SQL-based queries to actually make your investigation very seamless and easy. So moving on, we have compute. Compute is, so this time they had a big announcement saying that they have introduced their version 5 of the Nitro system, which has 2 times more transistors, 50 times faster DRAM, all sorts of good stuff. Basically, they've amped up all their chipsets. So anything that's running on these will benefit from the new introductions. So keep in mind that this is Nitro version 5 that has been introduced. So now in this slide, I've mentioned a couple of new EC2 instances or EC2 introductions that they've made during reInvent. And some noteworthy components, I would say, are the C7GN or Graviton 3E instance, which is capable of handling up to 200 gigabits per second network bandwidth and 50% better packet processing performance, right? So we have other instances that are optimized for high performance compute workloads, such as the HPC6 ID instances. And we have another set of EC2 instances that are that can support more memory optimized workloads, right? So there has been a lot of innovations and improvements to the existing EC2 instances, or the list of instances that we can run. So the best place to check it out is when you're creating EC2 instances, there will be a ton of more instances to choose from. So that's where you need to be and to actually explore these instances. So keep in mind that these are actually some of the prominent ones that were spoken about, but there are ton of additional stuff that they've introduced this year. So with that, I would like to say thank you. I basically covered the security portion of the reInvent and a couple of other features, as well as a bit of compute. So with that, I would like to hand over the presentation to Shamira, who will get into networking and I think some of the good stuff as well.
Yeah, thank you, Lahiru.
Awesome.
So let me share my screen. Yeah, hope you guys can see my screen.
Yeah, all good. Yeah, we can.
Great. Guys, I'm Jamir and I'm a AWS community builder and working as a associate tech lead at 99x. And today I will be quickly going through the some of the latest announcement by in AWS reInvent 2022 regarding DevOps and networking sections. So with the time we got, I will give you a quick overlook of 4 services I chosen. So first, in networking, so in the reInvent, Amazon VPS Lattice and AWS Verified Access are 2 of the most interesting announcement we had in last year. So if we go to Amazon VPC Lattice without much delay. Amazon VPC Lattice is a powerful application layer service. So it enables secure communication between your services, and it allows you to simplify your network operations. And it eliminates the need of managing underlying network connectivities, front-end load balancers, or sidecar proxies for every workload. And also it integrates seamlessly with the AWS identity and AWS IAM access service. So you can use the same authentication and authorization capabilities as the other AWS services. And furthermore, it allows you to choose from different compute types, such as instances, containers, and services for each service. And so this way you can easily modernize application. Now the microservices architecture is the trend. So this also help you to easily modernize your monolithic architectures into more scalable and cost-effective microservices architectures. And when we go into features of VPC Lattice, so VPC Lattice provides a service discovery with a centralized view of the services you own or share with your through the AWS RAM service. And furthermore, you can create a service network with a logical boundary to automatically implement services, service discovery and the connectivity. And it also automatically manages network connectivities between VPCs and accounts, and also provide, I'll say like that. So it is VPC Lattice is fully managed application layer proxy. So it supports weighted routing for deployments like blue, green, or canary style deployments. And also it provides a context-specific authentication and authorizations. As I mentioned, you can use IAM service and AWS identity for that. And when it comes to the use cases, so there are a couple of common use cases we can use VPC lattice. For example, you can simplify the service-to-service connectivity at any scale and also enhance application layer security. Furthermore, implementing advanced traffic management, gaining visibility into service-to-service interactions are some of the common use cases in Amazon VPC lattice. So that's basically the overview of Amazon VPC lattice and the features announced in the reInvent event in the last year. And next, there is another interesting topic in the network selection, AWS verified access. So if I discuss a bit more into this verified access, so AWS verified access is built on the AWS Zero Trust guiding principles. So a few months back, we had a session from Lahiru about what is Zero Trust. So if you can go back to our YouTube channel and get more knowledge on that as well. So since this AWS verified access is built on Zero Trust guiding principles, it is capable of validating each and every application request before granting access. So verified access remove the need for an VPN and simplify the remote connectivity experience for end-to-end users while reducing the management complexity for the users. So if we go into the features, so like I mentioned, it improves the security. So when we take a traditional security model, it evaluates access once and grant access for all users and grant access to users for the all application features. But with this verified access, it evaluates each application access request in real time and granting the access. And then it also improves the user experience since it removes the need for VPN. So there won't be any much issues with the VPN related issues users will face. So ultimately, it will improve the user experience. And also, it can be easily integrated with other security services like verified access integrate with identity and device management services. They can be both AWS related or third-party services. So we can use this data from other services and verify the trustworthiness of your users and the devices against the security requirements you define. And least not but last, so it also simplifies the troubleshooting and audits you can perform. So this verified access service will log all the access attempts to provide a centralized visibility into the application access. So it will help you to quickly respond to the security incidents and audit requests. And the most common use cases of these services will be like security in distributed users, managing corporate application access, and the centralized access logs. So these two services are the two most interesting announcements we had related to the networking side in the last year's AW reInvent. And so I will not go into deep and demonstrations with the times constraints and we got, and there are some detailed documentation in AWS site you can follow. So next I will move on to the DevOps side. So Internet Monitor and the this S3 multi-region access point failover controls are the two latest additions to the DevOps side. And first I will talk about this multi-region access failover controls. So AWS S3 multi-region access point is an exciting feature we had not last year, the way before. So it helped developers to build multi-region applications and provided a global endpoint that spans S3 bucket across multiple AWS regions. So it allows you to build multi-region applications with the same architecture used in a single region. And in the last year, reInvent, they announced this failover controls. So with this new addition for multi-region access points, this allows you to shift S3 traffic routed through a multi-region access point to an alternative AWS region within minutes. So you can test and build highly available applications easily. And so previously, this multi-access point model treated all the regions as active regions and sent traffic to any of them. But with this new model, you can specifically define what are the active regions and what are the passive regions. And so buckets in the active regions will receive traffics, all your get, put, and post request from the multi-access point, and the buckets you define as passive will not receive any requests. So AWS has provided a very comprehensive guide on how you can enable multi-access failover controls. And if you follow, you will see a graph like this where you can see where one-way traffic replications and two-way replications with your S3 buckets. If you are into building like S3 buckets or using any of the things like that, this is nice feature you to test out with your applications to ensure the seamless communications and failovers. And next, I will go to the Internet Monitor, Amazon Cloud Internet Monitor. So this is also another exciting feature we had related to DevOps side. And so this Internet Monitor provide visibility into how internet issues impact the performance of your application and availability, and how much of impact it has between your application hosted on AWS and the users. And ultimately, it reduces the time it takes for you to diagnose these issues. If there is any performance or availability issues, this will reduce the time it will take you to debug the issues. So this Internet Monitor uses connectivity data that AWS captured from its global networking footprint, and calculate a baseline of performance and availability of your application's internet traffic. So this data is same data as that AWS uses to monitor internet uptime and availability. With those measurements as a baseline, Internet Monitor raises awareness when there are significant problems in end users with the users in different geographic locations of your application. If I quickly go to some of the key features of this Internet Monitor. Internet Monitor suggests insights and recommendations for you. You can see what are the recommendations provided related to the network internet issues of your applications. You can improve them to use them to improve the end user experience. So you can explore these suggestions in real time and see what are the projected latencies or maybe impact of switching your applications into other services, or you can do rerouting of your traffics and workloads with the insight provided by the Internet Monitor. And also Internet Monitor, you can quickly identify the impacting your application's performance. What are the things impacting your application's performance and the availability? So you can easily track down these issues and give real-time solutions for them. And also Internet Monitor publishes measurements to CloudWatch logs and CloudWatch matrices. So you can easily see them. What are the information in your CloudWatch logs or matrices, and see what is the health information of your application in different geographics and networks specified by the application. And finally, so Internet Monitor sends health events to Amazon Event Bridge so that you can set up notifications. And if there is any issue caused by the network, you will be automatically receive a AWS Health Dashboard notification. And with those steps, you can take necessary measurements to mitigate the issue in your application. So guys, so that are the 4 things I need to give an overview of you. So I didn't go any demonstrations of any in details because we have some time constraints. And so now I think Lakindu can take over back for the quiz.